My name is Isabel Hartley, and I'm 38 years old. Competence doesn't get applause. It just holds. It keeps the lights paid, the fridge stocked, the tire changed before it blows on the highway. It's the reason my father's funeral program was proofread twice, and the flowers arrived at the church exactly 15 minutes before the service. It's also the reason I knew exactly where my prenup was saved, and how to pull up the clause my husband had forgotten. Last Tuesday, I buried my dad. 3 months from diagnosis to casket. Fast, brutal, no time to brace. I stood at the pulpit and talked about his woodworking, his terrible dad jokes, how he'd made me change a tire at 12 while my friends were at the mall. My voice cracked twice. I kept going. Dad hated when people quit in the middle of a job. When I walked back down the aisle to my pew, my husband of 6 years, Liam, was sitting there with his hands folded over a leather portfolio in his lap. He didn't look sad. He looked keyed up, like he was waiting for a meeting to start. As I slid onto the pew beside him, he leaned in close, breath warm against my ear. "We need to talk after this," he whispered. I nodded, dazed. I figured he meant the reception, or helping Mom with thank you notes, or maybe he'd finally say something real about losing my dad. The organist began the recessional. People stood, filed past the casket, laid roses on the polished wood. My mom clung to Aunt Denise, hollow-eyed. I hugged a parade of people I barely remembered, accepting murmured condolences like receipts. Liam guided me toward the back of the church, his hand light but insistent at my elbow. "I think this is actually perfect timing," he said. My stomach flickered. Perfect timing for what? He reached into the leather portfolio and pulled out a manila envelope, the kind used for contracts, for business. "I want a divorce," he said. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think starting fresh right now makes sense. New chapter for both of us." For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. My dad's casket was 20 feet away. My mother was sobbing into her sister's shoulder. Incense still hung in the air. "You're doing this right now?" My voice came out thin, like someone else's. "It's practical," Liam replied. He spoke in that calm, reasonable tone he used in negotiations. "You're going to be busy with the estate anyway. We can handle this alongside all that. Efficient." "My father just died," I said. Each word felt like it had corners. "I know, and I am sorry about that," he said, and something in me registered that he didn't look sorry at all. "But we can't put our lives on hold forever. I already have an attorney. You'll be served officially next week, but I wanted to tell you in person. Professional courtesy." Professional courtesy. At my father's funeral. Something cold slid into place behind my ribs. Not rage, not yet, just a hard, glassy clarity. "You're right about timing," I said. Relief actually flashed across his face. He thought I was folding. "I'm glad you're being mature about this." I slipped my hand into my purse, fingers steady. "Me too." I pulled out my phone, opened the Photos app, scrolled to a screenshot I'd taken 2 nights before, turned the screen toward him. He blinked. Then his eyes focused, and all the color leaked from his face. "Remember this?" I asked quietly. It was a picture of page 9 of our prenuptial agreement, the page he'd clearly forgotten. The one outlining the infidelity clause. $200,000, I read softly. Penalty if either party commits adultery during the marriage. You insisted on it, remember? Said it would keep us both honest. His mouth moved, but the words broke apart. I didn't. You did, I said. It's notarized, legal, enforceable. Before he could recover, a voice spoke from behind us. "Good afternoon, I'm her attorney." Liam and I both turned. Monica Patel stood 3 pews back, crisp dark suit, hair pinned neatly, leather briefcase at her feet. We'd met at her office 2 days ago, right after I'd hired a private investigator and gotten the first photos back. She nodded at me once, the tiniest signal. "Everything's ready." "We're prepared to file a countersuit for divorce on the grounds of adultery," Monica said calmly. "We have documentation of an 8-month affair with a coworker, who, coincidentally, is also your ex-girlfriend. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos." Liam's face went from white to blotchy red. You had me followed?" I thought of the Tuesday and Thursday strategy sessions he'd started having. The way his phone had begun living face down on the counter. The sudden insistence on separate passwords for security. "I got suspicious last month," I said. My voice stayed flat. "When you started working late the exact same nights every week. When you stopped looking me in the eye. So yeah, I confirmed it." "This is insane," he hissed. "You can't—" "Actually," Monica cut in smoothly, We can, and we will. You'll be receiving counterfiling documents within 48 hours. The $200,000 will be deducted from your share of marital assets in accordance with the signed agreement. Given the circumstances, my client will also be seeking full ownership of the house and her separate property investments. People were starting to glance over. You can feel when a room's attention shifts, the air tightens. Liam grabbed my arm, fingers biting into my skin. "You're really going to do this?" he whispered harshly. "Make a scene at your father's funeral?" "You handed me divorce papers at my father's funeral," I said. "I'm just responding to your sense of timing." He looked around, catching the curious eyes, the half-hidden stares. His expression twisted, panic and fury braided together. "We can talk about this later," he muttered. "Privately." "No," I said, and my voice surprised even me. It didn't shake. "You wanted to do this now. We're doing it now." Monica held out a business card. "All communication goes through me from this point forward," she said. "My client will not be speaking with you directly." Liam snatched the card like he wanted to shred it. He shoved the envelope back into his portfolio, jaw clenched, so tight, a vein stood out in his neck. Then he turned and walked straight out the side door of the church. He didn't say goodbye to my mother. He didn't look at the casket. He just left. For a moment, the world went muffled, like my ears had filled with water. The stained glass blurred. The choir's last notes faded into a hum that didn't feel like music. I became aware of my mother's voice saying my name. "Izzy?" she said, hand gripping my arm. "What was that about? What happened?" I looked at her as a woman who'd just lost her husband of 40 years, her eyes red and swollen, mascara smudged. I thought of telling her everything right there, in the aisle between the pews and the casket. Instead, I swallowed the words and shook my head. "I'll explain later, Mom," I said. "Let's get through today first." But even as I said it, some quiet part of me knew I was done just getting through things. Done waiting for other people to choose the timing of the blows. Liam had picked the battlefield. He'd brought divorce papers to my father's funeral, betting my grief would make me weak, compliant, easy to manipulate. He forgot who raised me. Dad had once made me strip and rebuild an entire cabinet after I'd tried to good enough my way through the first version. "If you let people see you don't mind shoddy work," he'd said, "they'll keep handing you shoddy work and calling it a favor." I stood in the back of that church, the scent of lilies thick in my throat, watching the door Liam had walked through swing slowly shut. Fine, I thought, feeling that cold clarity harden into something sharper. "You wanted a fresh start, Liam? You're going to get one. Just not the one you planned." The week after the funeral felt like a year someone had compressed into 7 days and set on spin cycle. I moved through it in fragments. Casseroles on the counter, sympathy cards in a stack, my mom's hollow, wandering footsteps in the house. The funeral flowers started to brown at the edges, going from white to ivory to the color of tea. I threw them out on day 5 because the sweetness was turning sour. Liam called every day. I didn't answer once. Everything went through Monica, just like she'd said in the back of the church. We'd signed in the engagement letter the same afternoon I'd walked into her office with shaking hands and a folder full of questions I hadn't wanted to ask. On day 7, I sat in Monica's conference room again. The blinds were half closed, letting in thin bands of daylight that cut across the polished table. A legal pad sat in front of me, mostly blank. My coffee had gone cold. "The PI's full report came back," Monica said, sliding a thick folder across to me. "I've already gone through it once. I'll walk you through the highlights." "Highlights," I repeated, because sometimes your brain latches onto the wrong word. Like this is a vacation brochure. She gave me a look that was almost soft. "Isabel, none of this is going to be pleasant. But you hired us to know, remember? Not to guess." I opened the folder. Dates, times, screenshots, photos. The affair had started 8 months ago at a company retreat. I recognized the resort in the background of one photo, a place we'd once talked about going to when things slowed down. In one shot, Liam stood by a fire pit with a woman I knew distantly from his stories. Tessa, the ex-girlfriend it was totally over with. No, really, Izzy, I swear. They were standing too close. His hand was on her lower back, the way it used to be on mine when he wanted me to know I wasn't alone in a room. 14 hotel receipts followed, neatly organized. Weekends he'd told me he needed to crunch numbers with a client. Tuesday and Thursday nights that had supposedly run long with strategy sessions. All the same hotel chain, all within 40 minutes of our house. My throat felt scraped raw. He used our joint credit card? Mostly his personal, Monica said. But yes, a few charges hit the joint account. We've highlighted them. The texts are worse. She flipped to another section. Printouts of messages between Liam and Tessa, pulled from backups and phone records. He'd complained that I was emotionally distant because I'd been spending time with my dad during chemo. He'd called me obsessed with work because I'd taken extra projects to cover time off for hospital visits. He'd written that he felt neglected. On page 3, there it was, circled in red ink. Tessa, when are you going to tell her? Liam, soon. I'm thinking after her dad's funeral. Tessa, seriously? That's dark even for you. Liam, she'll be too messed up to argue, vulnerable. I can get her to sign whatever my attorney draws up. Clean break, fresh start. My hands started to shake so badly the paper rattled. I set it down carefully, like it might explode. He planned it, I said. He planned to do it that day. Yes, Monica said. At least 2 months in advance, based on these messages. That's when he first consulted with his attorney as well. She tapped another page, billing records, email headers. I stared at the word vulnerable until it blurred. My dad had lost 30 pounds in 3 months. I'd watched his hands tremble when he tried to hold a coffee mug. I'd slept upright in a hospital recliner while machines beeped around us. Liam had seen me cry in the parking garage, forehead pressed to the steering wheel. And in his head, he'd made a note, good time to leverage. I'm going to throw up, I muttered. There's a bathroom down the hall, Monica said gently, or you can just sit. We're not on a timer. I didn't throw up. Instead, I sat there and thought of my father sanding wood. Slow, careful strokes until the grain came up smooth under his hands. Measure twice, cut once. Don't rush what matters. File everything, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Enforce the clause. Every word, every dollar. Monica nodded once, already in motion. Liam showed up at the house 2 days later. I knew because my phone buzzed with an alert from the doorbell camera while I was sitting on my parents' couch helping Mom go through condolence cards. Her handwriting shook when she signed our last name. Izzy? She said, seeing my face change. What is it? Just a delivery, I lied. I'll check. I stepped into the hallway and pulled up the app. Liam stood on the front porch, hands jammed in his pockets, portfolio nowhere in sight this time. He looked straight into the camera. Isabel, open the door, he said. We need to talk. I hit the microphone button. We don't, I said. All communication goes through Monica. You remember her? Dark suit, back pew, ruinous timing. His jaw clenched. This is ridiculous. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. You cheated on me for 8 months, I said, watching his face on my screen instead of through the glass. It felt safer somehow. And you tried to divorce me at my father's funeral. What proportion should I be using? He glanced down the street, then back at the door, like he could feel neighbors' curtains twitching. I made a mistake, he said, lowering his voice. People make mistakes. We can go to counseling. Work through this. No, I said. You're really going to throw away 6 years over this? He demanded. You already threw them away, I replied. I'm just refusing to pretend you didn't. His expression hardened. The prenup thing is cruel, Izzy. That money is half mine. That money was yours until you violated the terms you insisted on, I said. Repeatedly. In hotels I probably helped pay for. He laughed once, short and sharp. You know what? Fine, be that way. But you're not getting to keep the house. I've lived there for 6 years. I have equity in that. The house was mine before we married, I said. Title in my name only. You have no claim. A judge will see it differently, he shot back. Maybe, I said. Or maybe a judge will see 8 months of adultery and texts about manipulating a grieving daughter and side with me. We'll find out. We'll find. We stared at each other through the little circle of glass and Wi-Fi. For a second, I saw the man I'd married, the one who'd made me grilled cheese when I'd worked 12-hour shifts, who danced in the kitchen with me at midnight. Then the image slid sideways, and all I could see was the one at the hotel bar, whispering plans into someone else's ear. He shook his head, turned, and walked away down the path. He didn't look back. An hour later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened, a woman's voice poured out, smooth, practiced, faintly scolding. Isabel, this is Margaret, Liam's mother. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you are breaking my son's heart. He made a mistake and he's sorry. You are being vindictive and honestly cruel. Your father would be ashamed of how you're acting right now. Bringing my dead father into it. Classy. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Monica with a single line. Per your request, records of all communication. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Got it. Keep everything. Do not respond. The next day, Monica called to say Liam's lawyer had reached out. They're requesting a meeting to discuss potential modification of the prenup enforcement, she said. I could hear paper rustling on her end. In plain language, they're offering to drop his divorce filing if you agree not to enforce the infidelity clause. I imagined Liam pacing in some sleek office, hands in his hair, realizing the math didn't work in his favor anymore. My response is no, I said. File it all. Already did, Monica said, and I could hear the faint approval under her professionalism. His attorney also floated the idea that the prenup might not hold up because circumstances have changed since signing. I laughed, politely. I almost smiled. It felt strange, my mouth remembering how. Going back to work was like stepping onto a stage where no one had been told the script. I walked into my office building 2 weeks after the funeral. The security guard gave me that heavy, sympathetic nod people give the bereaved. Upstairs, a few coworkers hugged me, murmured that they were so sorry about my dad. By lunch, 3 separate people had also pulled me aside with almost identical looks, concern edged with something sharper. Are you okay? My manager asked, closing her door behind me. Really okay? I've heard some things. Some things turned out to be that I had snapped after my father's death, that I was making wild accusations about Liam. That grief had unbalanced me. Liam was getting ahead of the narrative, casting himself as the patient, wounded husband of an unstable woman. My attorney said this would happen, I told my manager carefully. We're going through a difficult divorce. I'd prefer not to discuss the details at work. She studied me for a long moment. If there's anything you need, time off, flexibility, I'll let you know, I said and meant it. But what I really needed was for one part of my life not to be on fire. That night, I went to my dad's house. My house now, technically. The silence there felt different from the silence at Mom's. His tools still hung on the pegboard in the garage, each in its outline like a chalk body. The sawdust smell lingered. I was going through a box of paperwork in his workshop when I found the letter. It was tucked into the case of his favorite handsaw, folded in half. The date in the corner was 2 months before his diagnosis. My name was on the front in his crooked block letters. I unfolded it with fingers that suddenly didn't feel steady at all. He wrote about marriage, about choosing partners, about the difference between stubbornness and strength, about his early years with Mom when they'd fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes, and bigger things like money and his stubborn need to be the provider. Then, in the middle of the page, a sentence underlined twice. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses. Don't wait for them to do it again. He never knew, I thought, staring at the ink. He never knew about the hotels, the texts, the funeral envelope. But somehow he knew I'd need those words. I sat on the workbench and cried then, not the neat, controlled tears I'd been shedding in bathrooms and car rides, but the ugly, open-mouthed kind that leave your face blotchy and your chest aching. Grief for him, for the marriage I thought I had, for the version of myself who still believed love and loyalty were the same thing. When the storm finally passed, I folded the letter back up and slid it into my wallet, behind my driver's license. Evidence, I thought, of a different kind. Not for the court, but for me. 2 more weeks until the preliminary hearing. 2 more weeks of Liam's side trying to paint me as the problem, the aggressor, the vindictive widow lashing out. Let them. He'd shown me who he was. I was finally believing him. 3 weeks after the funeral, the divorce turned into something uglier than I ever imagined, even after everything Liam had already done. Every day felt like a new fire to put out, and every fire seemed to be one he or his family had lit on purpose. The motion landed first. A thick envelope delivered by courier addressed to Monica, but CC'd to me. Inside was a legal filing claiming I had caused Liam emotional distress, that my harassment and aggressive legal actions had triggered severe anxiety and depression, and that the court should require me to pay his legal fees and cover therapy costs for his trauma. His trauma. The man who handed me divorce papers at my father's funeral. I sat on the couch at my mother's house, reading the document twice before the words clicked into place. Mom was in the kitchen making tea, humming softly, an old habit she fell into when she was trying to pretend she was okay. Monica, I said into the phone, voice flat. You've read it? Oh, yes. Papers rustled on her end. This is standard scorched earth strategy. When they can't win with facts, they attempt character assassination. He's painting me as unstable. He's painting you as a grieving woman who lashed out irrationally, Monica corrected, because he knows that narrative sells well in courtrooms when jurors haven't seen the evidence yet. I looked at the stacks of proof on the coffee table, hotel receipts, screenshots, the folder thick with 8 months of betrayal. He's scared, Monica added. That's all this is, a scared man throwing mud and hoping some sticks. He wasn't the only one throwing things, because the next day I walked into work and found Liam's brother yelling at security in the lobby. I just want to talk to her, he shouted, face red, hands gesturing wildly. She's destroying his life. Let me up there. The guard blocked him. Sir, step back. You need to leave the premises. I froze halfway to the elevator, heart pounding like something trying to punch out of my ribs. My manager spotted me, eyes wide, and hurried over. This is unacceptable, she whispered, grabbing my arm gently. Go into the office. I'll handle this. I did. I closed the door and listened to the muffled shouting until it faded. An hour later, I had already forwarded a full summary to Monica. Good, she said. Document everything. Judges hate this behavior. I wondered if judges hated betrayal at funerals too. Later that afternoon, my mom came into my childhood bedroom, her phone clutched in her hand. She didn't speak at first, just pressed the phone screen toward me. The call log showed Liam's father. Oh no, I muttered. Did you answer? I didn't know who it was, Mom said, voice trembling. He started shouting. Said you were vindictive, that you were weaponizing your father's death, that our family raised a cruel daughter. My stomach dropped. Mom. She sat on the edge of the bed and put both hands over her face. I can't do this, Izzy. I can barely make it through the day without your dad. I can't take strangers screaming at me about things I don't understand. Guilt punched me squarely in the chest. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because Liam and his family were using my mother's grief as ammunition. I put my arms around her. I'm so sorry. I'm handling it. You won't get another call. I promise. And I meant it. Some battles are mine, not hers. 2 days later, Monica called with an update. The affair partner is still in the picture, she said. 2 witnesses saw them together in public. Photos are circulating among mutual friends. I exhaled sharply. At least they're not hiding anymore. Exactly. That helps us. It proves he's not traumatized. He's simply continuing the relationship. He never stopped the relationship, I said bitterly. No, Monica agreed, and the court will see that clearly. But then she added, his lawyer is now arguing the prenup was signed under duress. That made me laugh. A sharp, humorless sound. Liam insisted on that clause, I said. He said it would keep us both accountable. I know, Monica said. We have the emails from the prenup attorney meetings. And we have the version of the prenup he marked up, where he literally wrote in the phrase, to maintain honesty in the relationship. Trust me, we're fine. She sounded confident. I wished I felt half that. The deposition was the part that nearly broke me. 5 hours. 5 long hours of Liam's lawyer asking questions crafted to paint me as unstable, reckless, and vindictive. Is it true you've been drinking more since your father's death, Ms. Hartley? I have had a glass of wine with dinner, I said evenly, not sure that constitutes a legal concern. Is it true you became obsessed with your husband's whereabouts? I noticed patterns that didn't align with what he was telling me. I confirmed those concerns. Is it true you planned this countersuit as revenge for his leaving you? I planned this countersuit as a response to being handed divorce papers at my father's funeral. That one landed so hard the lawyer actually paused. Behind him, Liam shifted in his seat, jaw tight, eyes flicking anywhere but at me. Monica squeezed my hand under the table once, quick, subtle, but grounding. When it was over, she walked me outside into open air. You did well, she said. Better than most people in your position. I didn't feel well. I felt hollow, like grief and betrayal were carving out space inside me and leaving nothing but a ringing echo where my heartbeat should be. 2 days later, I got another alert from the storage unit. Liam had tried to access it. Monica filed a notice immediately and told the storage company to block his access. He's searching for something, she said. We'll figure out what. I walked through the unit myself the next day just to make sure nothing was missing. Most of his things were already gone. The furniture was mine from before the marriage. The artwork he now claimed belonged to his family lineage had been bought from an Etsy artist 3 years ago with my credit card. He was grasping, desperate. A man whose plans had gone sideways so violently he was clawing for anything he could still take. 2 weeks until the preliminary hearing. Monica said it would be straightforward. It's just to determine if the prenup is valid and if the evidence is strong enough to enforce the infidelity clause. And if the judge rules in our favor, then the rest of the divorce proceeds with that ruling locked in, she said. He'll owe the full penalty. His share of marital assets will shrink dramatically. And if the judge doesn't? Monica was quiet for one beat. We'll appeal. But we have a strong case, Isabel. Stronger than most. I nodded, trying to let that settle. Trying to let myself believe it. But belief is harder after grief. Harder after betrayal. Harder when someone you loved used your father's death as a strategic opportunity. Sometimes, lying awake at night, I wondered how long Liam had been waiting. Planning. Preparing. Watching me crumble so he could make his move. I hoped the judge saw everything clearly. Not for revenge, but for truth. For consequences. For the version of me who stood in the back of that church and refused to let cruelty win. But mostly, for my father. For the promise I felt in my bones the moment I found his letter. I will not let someone mistake my kindness for weakness again. Part 4 would be the hearing. And I was finally ready. The morning of the preliminary hearing, the courthouse felt colder than it should have. Like the air conditioning had been cranked just enough to make people uncomfortable. Or maybe my nerves were running hot enough to make everything else feel icy. I wore a charcoal gray suit. My father always said gray was the color of getting things done. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady. Steady was what I needed. Monica met me in the lobby near security. She looked exactly like she had at the funeral. Crisp, composed, the kind of woman who would argue calmly even if the building were on fire. You ready? She asked. No, I said, but I'm here. She nodded once, approval. That's enough. We went upstairs. Liam was already there with his attorney, and he'd dressed for a performance. Dark suit, conservative tie, hair neatly combed. He looked somber, almost fragile, like a man devastated by grief and overwhelmed by the cruelty of a vindictive wife. His lawyer whispered something to him. He nodded, staring at the floor. He didn't look at me. But his mother did. She sat 2 rows back, lips pursed, eyes narrowed, already preparing to be outraged by whatever the judge said. I didn't see his father anywhere, probably too embarrassed by the last phone call. The hearing began with Liam's attorney presenting their side first. He stood confidently, stacking papers on the podium like he was preparing a sermon. Your Honor, he said, voice smooth, this prenuptial agreement should be dismissed due to duress, coercion, and substantial changes in circumstances rendering it punitive and unenforceable. I nearly laughed. Punitive. Funny word for something he insisted on. He launched into a long argument about how Liam had only signed the prenup under emotional pressure. False. How he'd feared losing me if he didn't sign. False. How I had controlled the financial terms of the marriage. Laughably false. And how the enforcement of the infidelity clause would leave Liam destitute and emotionally shattered. The judge's expression didn't change. Then Liam's mother took the stand. Her chin lifted, shoulders squared, ready to deliver her role. My son, she said, voice thick with practiced emotion, has always been the more sensitive one. Isabel, she mispronounced my name, has always been controlling. She kept him away from friends. She monitored his spending. She insisted on this prenup and threatened to cancel the wedding if he didn't sign. Every sentence was a lie. Provable lies. Monica didn't flinch. She simply waited. During cross-examination, she walked to the podium with the calm grace of someone holding a loaded weapon. Mrs. Turner, she said, are you aware your son had been having an 8-month affair prior to filing for divorce? Liam's mother sniffed. Alleged affair. We have 14 hotel receipts, Monica replied. Shall I read them aloud? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. His mother stiffened. I'm not aware of the details. Monica nodded. Of course. Are you aware your son served my client with divorce papers at her father's funeral? My son was trying to be considerate, she insisted. He wanted to tell her in person. At a funeral, Monica clarified, 20 feet from the casket. Silence. Even the judge looked up. His mother opened her mouth, then shut it. That's all, Monica said, returning to our table. Our turn. Monica presented the prenup first. The emails between Liam and his own attorney showing he insisted on the infidelity clause. The marked-up draft in his handwriting. The notes from both our independent legal counsel confirming no duress. No coercion. Just a man who once believed consequences would keep us both honest. Then the evidence. The hotel receipts. The surveillance photos. The credit card statements. The text messages. The ones where he complained about me being emotionally distant while my father was dying. The ones where he laughed with Tessa about timing the divorce to when I'd be too messed up to think straight. The judge read those twice. His expression stayed neutral, but something shifted in the room, like oxygen had gotten heavier. Then Monica called me to the stand. I walked up, placed my hand on the Bible, and sat down. The courtroom lights felt too bright. My palms dampened. I could feel Liam's eyes on me, Finally. Ms. Hartley, Monica said gently, tell the court what happened on the day of your father's funeral. So I did. I told them about the whisper in the pew, the manila envelope, the words perfect timing, the professional courtesy, the timing he'd chosen because he thought grief made me pliable. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. Then Liam's lawyer came at me like a man desperate to break something. You hired a private investigator to follow your husband, he said accusingly. I hired a PI to confirm suspicious behavior after repeated lies, I said. You enforced this clause to financially ruin him. I enforced a contract we both signed, I corrected, one he insisted on. You ambushed him at a funeral with a countersuit. That one I let breathe. Carefully, deliberately, I turned to the judge. He handed me divorce papers at my father's funeral, I said quietly. I simply made sure I wasn't empty-handed. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge cleared his throat. Recess, he said, 30 minutes. Monica and I stepped into the hallway. My legs felt unsteady, like the adrenaline was fading too fast. You did perfectly, she said. You think it's enough? I whispered. She rested a hand on my shoulder. I think the truth is clear. When we returned to the courtroom, Liam wouldn't look at me. His shoulders were tight, face rigid. He knew. He already knew. The judge picked up the file. I held my breath. The prenuptial agreement is valid, he said plainly. The infidelity clause is enforceable. My heart thudded once, hard. Furthermore, the evidence of adultery is overwhelming and credible. The $200,000 penalty stands. Liam made a strangled sound. His mother gasped, loudly. The judge continued, unbothered. All provable false statements made in testimony today are noted. Sanctions will be applied. Legal fees are each party's own responsibility. The house remains Ms. Hartley's separate property. Division of remaining marital assets will proceed with the penalty deducted first. He closed the file. This hearing is adjourned. Just like that. It was over, at least the big part. Liam's shoulders collapsed inward. His lawyer put a hand on his back. His mother looked like she'd been slapped. As we packed our things, there was movement behind us. Liam was standing, walking toward me. Monica stepped in front of me before he could get close. No contact, she said firmly. All communication goes through counsel. He looked at her, then over her shoulder at me. His voice cracked on the first word. I hope you're happy. I met his eyes. For the first time since the funeral, there was no anger in me. Just truth. You destroyed it, I said. I just made sure you didn't profit from it. He flinched, then walked past us. Outside the courthouse, I saw Tessa waiting by his car. She looked nervous. He didn't take her hand. Not anymore. My mother was waiting for me in the parking lot, eyes shining. She pulled me into a long, fierce hug. Izzy, she whispered, your dad would be proud of you. I held her tight. I hope so, I said. But in my heart, I knew. He would have told me to stand my ground. He would have told me not to let cruelty go unanswered. He would have told me to be steady. And I was. The biggest battle was over. The rest was just paperwork. And healing. And relearning that grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you sharp. It makes you awake. It makes you dangerous to the people who underestimate you. And Liam had underestimated me in the worst possible way. He thought kindness meant softness. He thought grief meant surrender. He thought timing would break me. He was wrong. The day after the hearing felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. Like a storm had finally passed, but the air hadn't decided yet whether to return to normal or stay electric. I woke up in my parents' house, in the room that still held old trophies and a faded poster from a band I used to love. My mom was already up, moving softly through the kitchen like she was afraid to wake ghosts. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself breathe. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was bracing for another attack. Still, the chaos hadn't stopped, because now the fallout began. Liam's attorney emailed Monica within 12 hours of the ruling. Requesting negotiation, Monica read aloud during our follow-up call. Negotiate what? I asked. Monica snorted. At this point, his expectations. She clicked through the attachments. Financially, his situation is bleak. Between the penalty, his legal fees, and the hit to his share of marital assets, he'll walk away with around $30,000. $30,000. From a marriage he thought he could dismantle strategically, profitably, cleanly. It should have felt satisfying. It didn't. It just felt like truth. You don't drop a bomb in someone's life and walk away unburned. Monica added, he may try to appeal. His attorney is hinting at it, but the evidence is too strong. Appeals court won't overturn this. Good. Not because I wanted him ruined. Because I wanted the suffering he caused to mean something. Later that afternoon, I took a walk around my dad's neighborhood. The trees were starting to turn, the kind of soft yellow that creeps in before autumn commits. The air smelled like cut grass and cold concrete. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unfamiliar number. I knew before listening who it was. "Isabel," Liam's mother said, voice sharp as a rusted blade. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my son. You've taken everything from him. You are heartless. Absolutely heartless." I deleted it, then forwarded the transcript to Monica because documentation was second nature now. Part of me wondered if his mother would ever realize it wasn't me who pulled the first thread. It was her son unraveling the marriage from the inside out. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The next day, Liam's brother texted me. Threats, insults, accusations. I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to Monica. "Good," she said. "We'll add this to the harassment file." But then her voice softened. "Isabel, are you okay?" I wasn't, but I was surviving. "Getting there," I said. Which was true. Getting there was a process. The real surprise came 2 days later. A friend of a friend sent me a screenshot from Instagram. Tessa, the ex-girlfriend he'd destroyed our marriage for, was posting from a rooftop bar. A soft-lit selfie, a caption about new beginnings, and someone else's hand intertwined with hers. Not Liam's, a different man's. Apparently, loyalty wasn't her strong suit either. "Poetic," Monica texted when I sent it to her. I didn't reply. Not because I disagreed, but because life had already written the poetry better than either of us could. A week later, I finally went back to my own house. The house I'd bought myself years before the marriage. The house Liam had claimed he had equity in. I stood in the entryway, keys cold in my hand, and breathed in. It smelled like dust and silence and faint, stale sadness. But underneath it, something else. Possibility. I walked through each room slowly. My office. The kitchen where we used to dance barefoot at midnight. The living room where we'd fought over nothing and everything. The bedroom where his lies had slept beside me for months. I didn't cry. I thought I would. Instead, I reached a decision with the same clarity I felt the day Liam handed me that envelope. I was selling the house. Not because I was running, but because I didn't need to live among ghosts. I needed a space that was mine in truth, not just on paper. Something fresh. Not like his version of fresh start. Not destruction disguised as liberation. A real fresh start. A beginning built on honesty. And on myself. I spent the evening packing a few things. Books, clothes, keepsakes from my dad I couldn't let go of. As I sorted through a box in the workshop, I found another letter. Not tucked away in a saw case this time. This one lay inside an old toolbox, folded neatly, written in my dad's familiar hands. I opened it, heart thudding. He wrote about kindness. About how it was not the opposite of strength. About how people often mistake compassion for softness, but true strength is choosing grace when you could choose cruelty. But then the last line struck me like a match. Never let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness, and never let cruelty go unanswered. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when it costs you. I'm proud of you, already, even if you don't know why yet. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter, letting the words seep into the bruised parts of my heart. Dad didn't know what would happen, but somehow he knew exactly what I'd need. I whispered, "I miss you," and folded the paper carefully. Then I stood up, because grief can break you open, but it can also rebuild you. Stronger, sharper, kinder, in ways that matter, uncompromising, in ways that count. The final divorce decree arrived 3 weeks later. Official, complete, irrevocable. Liam didn't appeal. He didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply disappeared. Or maybe he just ran out of places to hide. I started therapy. I put the house on the market. I picked out an apartment downtown. Small, bright, near the river. New. Not in the way Liam meant. In the way life intended. The way I intended. Friends asked if I felt vindicated. Coworkers asked if I felt relieved. My mother asked if I felt free. But the truth? I felt steady. Finally. Like the ground had stopped tilting. Like I could breathe without the air catching in my throat. Like I no longer had to apologize for protecting myself. Liam thought my grief would make me weak. He thought guilt would make me surrender. He thought timing would make me obedient. He was wrong. And the moment I walked out of court with my dignity intact and my life still mine, I knew one thing for certain. Kind doesn't mean naive. Steady doesn't mean soft. And underestimated doesn't mean defeated. Not anymore. Not ever again.